Okay, this is the review for our SIG test that's going to be on Friday. This is for SIG test number 10. So you could potentially have this one passed off, but the first one is a zero product property. Key things in order to be able to do this, we need to have it equal to 0. It needs to be factored. And then what we're going to do is set each individual part equal to 0. So either 7x equals 0, 2x minus 7 equals 0, or x plus 7 equals 0. When I solve this, I get x equals 0, x equals 7 halves, and x equals negative 7. Watch out for this guy. If there's no x here, if it was just 7 times this, then we would not have that as a solution. Remember, it has to have an x to be able to have a solution. For this second one, we need to factor first. So I put in 4x squared in this part, negative 6 here. Multiply those together, I get negative 24x squared. So I need two numbers that multiply to give me negative 24, but add to give me negative 5. So if I use this, now since it's negative, one's positive, one's negative. So if I did negative 8 times 3, that multiplies to give me negative 24, but negative 8 plus 3, that equals negative 5. So I have negative 8x here, 3x there. I could factor out a 4x. Could factor out a 3. I have 4x plus 3 here. 4x times x will give me 4x squared. 4x times negative 2 is negative 8x. So there's my factors. Then I solve this. I do 4x plus 3 equals 0, and x minus 2 equals 0. When you solve it, you get x equals negative 3/4, and x equals 2. On topic 22, we're looking at the graphs of parabolas. It's basically everything we can about them. So the main method we were using is we find the x-intercepts. So we factor this. This one factors to x minus 3 times x plus 1. You can check your middle term by doing insides is negative 3x, outside is x. That gives me negative 2x. The next thing I would do is figure out your intercepts. So this happens when the factor ends up equaling 0. Basically, I got 0 is equal to this, just like the problem above. So I got x equals 3, and x equals negative 1. So the intercepts are at 3, 0, and a negative 1, 0. My vertex is going to happen halfway between those two. So 3 minus 1 is 2. So when I do 3 plus 1, negative 1, I get 2 divided by 2 is 1. Then I plug 1 into my equation. I get 1 squared minus 2 minus 3 gives me negative 4. That's my vertex. It happens right between the x-intercepts. Graph opens upward because x squared is positive. Y-intercept, let x equals 0. I got negative 3. Your axis of symmetry will always have the same x value as the x-coordinate of your vertex. Then this is a question of plotting the point, plotting my x-intercepts, and then drawing my parabola. The second example has it where it's factors to x minus 3 times x minus 3, or x minus 3 squared. My vertex is going to be the same as my x-intercepts. The vertex happens at 3, 0, same as my x-intercept. So what that tells you when you get one in this format, it's just going to touch the x-axis at that point. Then you can use that in the y-intercept to be able to sketch your parabola. For the last one, if you ever have a negative involved, I can factor out the negative. So I get x squared plus 8x plus 12. Then I factor this part, two numbers that multiply to give me 12 but add to give me 8, it would be 6 and 2. My x-intercepts then would be at negative 6 and negative 2. To find the vertex, average those two. Halfway between negative 6 and negative 2 is negative 4. Take negative 4, plug into any of these forms, you'll get 4. Then my y-intercept, I let x equal 0. I got negative 12. Again, your line of symmetry is the same spot as the vertex. This graph opens down because the negative in front of the x squared. So I plotted my vertex. That's negative 4, 4. My two x-intercepts, and I drew my parabola. Topic 23 is basically the same as topic 21, except now you're going to have to do a little bit of extra steps. It's still a kind of zero product property, but it's really solving quadratics by factoring. So the key thing is factoring. So first thing you should do is get it equal to 0. You move everything to one side so it equals 0. This one already does. Then you look for anything in common that's through this. Well, 3 will go into all those terms. X will go into all those terms. So I got 3x times x squared minus 5x minus 6. This factors to x minus 6 and x plus 1. Solving it, I get 3x equals 0, x minus 6 equals 0, x plus 1 equals 0. So we have 0, 6, and negative 1. For this one, I'm going to move my terms around so that I get the square part positive. So I subtracted 3x squared, subtracted 10x, and left the negative 24 on that side. Two numbers that multiply to give me negative 24 but add to negative 10. So I use negative 12 and 2. So either x minus 12 equals 0 or x plus 2 equals 0. We've got 12 and we've got negative 2. For our next one, again, we already have it equal to 0. If I'm going to look for anything in common I can take out, well, they're all multiples of 3. So I took out a 3. This factors then to 2x squared plus 5x minus 3 equals 0. So now you may feel more comfortable doing our rectangle. We would have 2x squared here, negative 3 there. I get negative 6x squared. So I need two numbers that multiply to give me negative 6, but add to give me positive 5. So I would use negative 6x and 1x. Then I can get 2x. I can factor out a 2x out of these two. And then I have 2x times x, 2x times negative 3. Then right here I've got x times 1. So I have 2x. Shoot, this one right here. Oh, I want a positive 5x, not negative. So that one should have been plus x, 6x, and that was minus. So I know this would be plus 3 and minus 1. So 2x minus 1 times x plus 3. 3 is out here, but it cannot equal 0, so I can ignore him. 2x minus 1 equals 0. X plus 3 equals 0. Solving it, you get x equals a half, and x equals negative 3. On D, move everything to one side so the equation equals 0. So I subtracted 2x cubed, I got x cubed. Move the 24x to the other side, so I get x cubed plus 5x squared minus 24x equals 0. Factor out an x. This one factors a little bit easier. Two numbers that multiply to give me negative 24 but add to 5 would be 8 and negative 3. Then I could solve it. I get x equals 0. I get x equals negative 8 and x equals 3. For simplifying square roots, remember you're going to make a factor tree. 2 times 28. 28 is 4 times 7. 4 breaks down to 2 times 2. Take a pair of 2's out. 2 and 7 is left inside. So it's 2 root 14. For this one, simplify the top. Square root of 32. I have 16 times 2. 16 is 4 times 4, so I got my pair. Doesn't have to broke down all the way. So 4 comes out. 4 root 2 over 8. 4 cancels 8. I get root 2 over 2. When you add square roots, they have to match, just like x's. It's like 6x plus 4x equals 10x. So I have 6 root 5s plus 4 more root 5s gives me 10 root 5. These guys don't match right now, but I can simplify square root of 8. 8 is 2 times 4. Square root of 4 is 2, so I get 2 root 2 plus 1 root 2 gives me 3 root 2. For 48, I want to break him down. That's 4 times 12. Then 12 is 4 times 3. I got a pair of 4s. Again, I don't have to go all the way down. Once I find a pair, I can pull it out. 7 root 3 minus 4 root 3 is 3 root 3. Then on this one, I'm going to, again, simplify each one before I try to combine them. 98 is 2 times 49. 49 is 7 times 7. So I take out a 7. 2 is left inside. 18. 2 times 9. 9 is 3 times 3. Take out a 3. 2 is left inside. It gives me 7 root 2 plus 3 root 2 is 10 root 2. Okay, next one is solving perfect square problems. So anytime you have something that's a square, or you see something where it's in parentheses with a square, the easiest way to do these problems is to solve for x squared and then take the square root. So it's basically using the square root. So I added 37, got 49, divided by 9. So now I got x squared equals 49 over 9. Take the square root of both sides, so it's plus or minus the square root of 49 over 9. Square root of 49 is 7. Square root of 9 is 3. So my answer is plus or minus 7 over 3. On this one, I'm going to add 42. I want to get x plus 8 squared by itself. So I got 90. Divided by 5, I get 18. Take the square root, I get x plus 8 is plus or minus. Remember, every time you take a square root, you got to do plus or minus the square root of 18. 18 I can break down to 3 root 2, and there's a factor tree for you. So I have plus or minus 3 root 2, then just have to subtract 8. On C, again I want to get my x squared by itself, so I added 65, got 100, divided by 2 is 50. So x is plus or minus the square root of 50. 50 is 25 times 2. Square root of 25 is 5. Plus or minus 5 root 2. And the last one, we have added 37, got 98, divided by 2 is 49. Take the square root. Square root of 49 is 7, so I got plus or minus 7 is equal to 2x minus 1. Now for most of you, it's usually a little bit easier now to make it like two problems. Either 2x minus 1 equals positive 7, or 2x minus 1 equals negative 7. Solving it, I get 2x equals 8, so x equals 4. Add 1, I get 2x equals negative 6, so x equals negative 3. Okay, on to the new topics. New topics, completing the square and then quadratic formula. When you're completing the square, we started with 7 equals x squared minus 6x. You want to get these two terms by themselves. Then, to complete the square, I take half of this number and square it and add it to both sides. So I added 9 and I added 9. This side will factor to x minus 3 times x minus 3. That's how it becomes x minus 3 squared. So that's true. Every time we have a perfect square, it's going to have that pattern. This number, half of this number squared is that number. Now to figure out what this term is right here, it's x and then half of this term. Half of negative 6 is negative 3 squared. Okay, get rid of a square, take a square root. I get plus or minus 4 equals x minus 3. So I can add 3. I get 3 plus 4. I get x equals 7. Or I can do 3 minus 4. I get x equals negative 1. So again, let's look at our steps. This is what I originally started with. Half of negative 12 is negative 6 squared. I added 36 to both sides. This factors now to x minus 6 times x minus 6. 13 and 36 is 49. Take the square root. I get plus or minus 7. So either x minus 6 equals 7 or x minus 6 equals negative 7. Solving, we get 13 and negative 1. Same idea with C. Half of 8 is 4. So I added 16 to both sides. This becomes x. Half of negative 8 is negative 4. X minus 4 squared equals 32. Take the square root, plus or minus the square root of 32. Again, 32 breaks down. 8 times 4. 8 breaks down to 2 times 4. Got a pair of 4s. So I have plus or minus 4 root 2. Added 4. Same thing on this one. I had x squared plus 14x. Half of 14 is 7. Squared is 49. Added 49 to both sides. You got 54. This becomes x plus 7 squared. Take the square root. Plus or minus 54. Root 54. 54 breaks down. 2 times 27. 3 times 9. 9 is 3 times 3. Got a pair of 3's. 3 and 2 are left inside. So I got plus or minus 3 root 6. Subtracted 7. Okay, when you get to E and F, they're not in the correct format. So I've got to move it so the x's are on one side, the numbers on the other. So I subtracted x squared. I got x squared minus 2x. Now these guys are by themselves. Put the number on the other side. Half of negative 2 is negative 1. Squared is plus 1. So I got 9 is equal to x minus 1 squared. Take the square root. I have plus or minus 3 is equal to x minus 1. Add 1. I got 1 plus 3 is equal to 4. 1 minus 3 is equal to negative 2. Okay, for this next one, for F, I want to, again, move all my x's to one side. Anything that doesn't have an x to the other. So I have x squared. I subtract 6x. Subtract 12. You get 36. Half of negative 6 squared is 9. So negative 3 squared is positive 9. Added 9. This factors to x minus 3 squared. 36 and 9 is 45. We'll take the square root. Square root of 45 will break down to 3 root 5. Here again, here's the steps if you need them. X minus 3, I added 3. And then finally, a quadratic formula. Okay, so you need to memorize the formula. The quadratic formula. Negative b. So the negative boy couldn't decide to go to the radical party being squared. He missed out on 4 awesome chicks, and the party was over at 2 a.m. So negative b plus or minus square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. To use it, you have to make sure it equals 0. So x squared plus 7x plus 7. The term in front of x squared is my a. Term in front of x is my b. And the individual term is my c. So I've got a equals 1, b equals 7, c equals 7. So I did negative b plus or minus square root of b squared, that's 49, minus 4 times a, which was 1, times c. We do 49 minus 28, I get 21. So I have negative 7 plus or minus square root of 21, and it's all over 2a, which is over 2. So you need to be able to do this both in radical form and also decimal form. Now to do the decimals, use your calculator. Do negative 7 plus the square root of 21. Make sure you hit enter and divide it by 2. That gives me this answer. Then I did negative 7 minus the square root of 21. Hit enter, divided by 2. Gives me this answer. For b, we're not in the correct form, so I subtract 3 first. So a is 2, b is negative 6, c is negative 3. So negative of negative 6 is 6, plus or minus negative 6 squared is 36, minus 4 times a times c. When we simplify this out, 36 minus 4 times 2 times negative 3. Well, negative times negative will make that positive. We end up getting 36 plus 24. That's 60. 60 breaks down to 6 times 10. 6 is 3 times 2. 10 is 2 times 5. I got a pair of 2's. 3 and 5 are still inside. So I get 6 plus or minus 2 root 15 all over 4. When I reduce it, I can't reduce when it's in this form. I have to wait till I simplify the square root. Then I look what's in common between all of those terms. Divide them all by 2. I get 3 plus or minus 1 root 15 over 2. Problem C. Again, this is already equal to 0, so a is 3, B is negative 14, C is 7. So negative 14 is 14. Use your calculator. 14 squared is 196. Remember, this is always going to be a positive number, never negative. And minus 4 times 3 times 7, we get 84. So 14 plus or minus the square root of 196 minus 84 all over 2a, which was 6. 196 minus 84 is 112. 112 breaks down to 2 times 56. 56 is 2 times 28. 28 is 4 times 7. 4, of course, is 2 times 2. Got 2 pairs of 2. I get 4 times the square root of 7. 2 will go into all 3 of those terms. So reduced to 7 plus or minus 2 root 7 over 3. Now when you do this on your calculator, I think it's best to use this form, because sometimes it's hard for students to type in this stuff right here. So 14 plus square root of 112, enter, divided by 6. 14 minus the square root of 112, hit enter, divided by 6. And you should get those two answers. Finally, part D. We have 6x squared plus x. We already have, then we're going to move the 5 to the other side. Okay, a equals 6, b equals 1. Nothing in front of the x, that means it's a 1. And then negative 5. So again, negative 1 plus or minus 1 squared is 1, minus 4 times 6 times c was negative 5. I end up getting 120 plus 1 is 121. Square root of 121 is 11. So I get negative 1 plus 11 over 12. So negative 1 plus 11 would give me, whoops, positive 10. So I got positive 5/6. Then negative 1 minus 11 is negative 12 over 12. That's negative 1. So this one didn't require any simplification. That should have been positive. Okay, the test questions are very similar. So go through, study it, review it, make corrections, re-practice it, re-watch the video if you need to give yourself extra help.